I heard a lot about people's concern about crime, and particularly the fentanyl crisis that we're experiencing here in America. 108,000 Americans died of drug overdoses last year alone. About 60% of those were from synthetic opioids, the fentanyl, the precursors of which are usually come from Asia, mainly China, to Mexico and then across the southern border. And then, of course, the ongoing Biden border crisis as a result of the open border policies of the Biden administration. 2.3 million migrants have been encountered along the border just since President Biden has taken office. Because of the catch and release policies associated with asylum seekers, even those people who ultimately will not be able to qualify for asylum, which is roughly 85 to 90% of the people who claim it, will have melted into the great American landscape, maybe given a notice to appear for a future court hearing, but because of the backlog of immigration cases at immigration courts, we're talking years down the line. But these are just some of the things that I'm hearing from my constituents about. And these are chronic problems that, frankly, they do not see an appropriate and adequate response coming from Washington to address the very real impact on their everyday lives. What they can afford to buy at the grocery store, how safe their communities are, whether they feel safe walking around their neighborhood or sending their children out to play, whether the family will travel to see relatives for the holidays or whether they'll have to stay home in order to save money to put food on the table. Those are not the problems that our Democratic colleagues or the majority here in the Senate seems to be focused on like a laser. When I travel to Texas from Washington, it often feels like I'm visiting a parallel universe. You get here and things don't seem that odd at first, but the scenery is different, but the same problems Texans talk about are on display. You read headlines about the border crisis. You see that the mayor of Washington, D.C. is complaining and claiming a humanitarian crisis because although it claims to be a sanctuary city, when Governor Abbott or Governor Ducey from Arizona provide transportation to these sanctuary cities, all of a sudden the border crisis that we've been living with for a year and a half now seems very real. It's nice to see some folks in other parts of the country experiencing what my constituents and border communities have been experiencing for a long time now, together with the additional expense associated with things like deploying the National Guard to back up the Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection, all at Texas taxpayer expense, something that is uniquely a federal responsibility. But when the Biden administration refuses to do its job, it falls to people who live in those communities along the border and in those states to try to do the best they can. Despite the fact that our Democratic colleagues are reading the same headlines about crime, drug overdoses, inflation, and the border, despite the headlines here reflecting those concerns, our colleagues here in the Senate and in the White House have chosen to ignore them pretty much altogether. Our friends across the aisle have controlled the Senate now for a year and a half, as well as the House and the White House. They have the power to set any agenda that they see fit. They don't